Hey y'all, I'm Stay Hall.
And I'm Wallace Hall.
And together we are the Halls.
And this is The Hallway.
So in our last video, we kind of catered to our singles a little bit, and I think we may do that a little bit today.
Okay.
But last time we talked about 5 things that we each changed about ourselves when we first entered into our marriage. And we talked about how change is a good thing, and as a couple in a seriously committed relationship and a marriage, it's our jobs to help each other be the best possible version of ourselves.
Right.
Now today we're going to take a look at our expectations of what marriage and serious relationship is supposed to be versus the actual reality. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the fact that you cannot expect your spouse, your partner, your soulmate to always react to things the way you react to them or the way you want them to react. I know my first time really encountering this issue in our marriage was when I came home from work all in a tizzy about an encounter I had with a colleague. And I was just so upset about how things went. And I wanted to come home and tell my husband. And of course, I wanted him to agree with me and be just as upset and just as appalled as I was at my coworker's behavior. But instead, he says to me, well, babe, I get it. I know why you might be upset, but do you think there was anything that you could have done to maybe help the situation be a little bit better? Do you think it's really or do you think it's really worth being so upset? And when I tell you, I couldn't believe the words that were coming out of his mouth, because all I wanted him to say is, you're right. Those people are crazy. I don't know how you deal with it. That is ridiculous. And that's not what he said. So the reality is your spouse is not always going to react to things the way that you react to them, or even more so the way you want them to react. But as a good, caring, loving spouse, their reaction should be exactly what they think is best for you at the time.
Right. In certain situations, you got to know how to react and respond. You can't be... Try to be that calming voice. I saw that particular time that she was very upset about the situation. So I didn't want to be all rah-rah with her. And then, we ride out like Bonnie and Clyde. But I wanted to be that calming voice to kind of bring her down and to help her kind of allow her to vent and get it out. But try to help her, show her some ways that we can, that she can maybe look at it from a little different perspective where she wouldn't have been so upset. Although there are times where you're going to have to be that rah-rah person and be right along with them. But I always try to be that calming voice, that voice of reason. That's what I was trying to say. Be that voice of reason situation, because I know when I come home, sometimes I'm real upset. She's been there for me, just trying to get me to calm down and maybe look at it from a little different perspective so I'm not so upset. But that's what we try to be for each other, to be a calming voice and be that voice of reason to try and do it. But there are some times where you're going to have to be, let's go get them. Hey, let me break it out. Let's get it. Let's get at it. But let's try to be that calming voice, because some things may be minor to you, but major to someone else. But you got to honor and respect that. So that's what we try to do in that situation. Not always, be that person to be all upset. But sometimes you don't have to be. But then other times you want to make sure you try to be that voice of reason to kind of calm the situation down.
Right. And the thing is, what you look for in a soulmate, in a partner in life, in a best friend, is that person who's going to be honest and truthful with you, even when it might not be easy.
Right.
You want that person who is going to say to you, you need to cool it. You want that person who is not afraid to pull your coattail, to kind of bring you back to reality. You don't want someone who's just going to agree with everything that you say and everything that you do, even to your detriment. So I learned that it's great to have someone who is not just a yes man, because if that's the case, I'm never going to get any better.
Right.
And so what we both try to do is be honest at all times, but still say and do things in a way where it's not going to hurt the other person's feelings, but not shy away from telling them that they're doing something wrong. because you're afraid to hurt their feelings. Because
Right.
I rather hurt his feelings and guide him in the right direction than to just agree with him and watch things fall apart.
Right. Both of us can be be emotional, and sometimes you get emotions involved. You tend to overreact. So both of us can't be doing that. So a lot of times, like I said earlier, you got to try to be that voice of reason, trying to bring the level down. Just simmer down now. But then there's going to be times where it's going to be, that. But you want to be that person, be that voice of reason.
Right. So that you can have a nice and stable relationship.
Right.
Now, the other thing that I believe is an expectation in a lot of young marriages is that they are not going to have any disagreements, at least not early on. Those first few years, that first year is just going to be the honeymoon stage, and it's just going to be fun and rainbows and lollipops. And that's not the reality. The first years of marriage are usually your most difficult. Mm-hmm. You're in a situation most of the times that you've never been in before. You are possibly living together for the very first time, spending more time together than you ever have before.
Right.
And with two different people coming from two different backgrounds and being used to being by themselves possibly for years, every once in a while you're going to bump heads, and that's okay. Don't think just because you have some roadblocks early on and some disagreements early on that, oh my gosh, I made a horrible mistake. This wasn't the right decision. We're arguing. We're not getting along. We don't agree on everything. It's time for us to go our separate ways. No, you have to realize that these are just growing pains and things will level out soon enough. But with two different people, with two different ways of thinking, arguments and disagreements are bound to happen from time to time, but it's how you work through and push through as a couple that really matters.
Right. You got to understand, like I said, you are two different people, two totally different people, different backgrounds, different parts of the country. A lot of times, like we are Texas, she's from Pennsylvania. So two different people, different backgrounds, just trying to look at stuff differently. Slang is different. A lot of times the way word usage is different. So that was some things we had to overcome. Some words that were said, don't really mean that much to her, but to me, coming from my background, it's like, what are you talking about? So it's learning that stuff. And like I say, we've quite a few years now into this, and we're still learning each other. We're still learning how we respond and react to different things. So we just try to communicate and talk those things out.
Right. It was so funny. This one day, he was kind of getting on my nerves, and we were just dating, and he had called me and was like, hey, you mind if I stop by? And I'm like, you know what? I'm not really feeling you today. And I wasn't that serious at all. It was just like he was working my nerves that day, but I wasn't mad. And he thought like I wanted to break up. And I'm like, what? And he's like, I just can't believe, just because we had this minor disagreement, now you want to break up and whatever. And I'm like, I just said I wasn't feeling you today. Like I say that to my kids sometimes, and I'm never going to break up with him. And he's like, well, from where I come from, if somebody says they're not feeling you, then that's just like they're done. They're not interested.
Yeah.
And so you have to realize that there are going to be things that are sometimes just misunderstood in the relationship because you do take things differently. And what happens when you have those little disagreements and quirks early on in the relationship, it's actually a time to grow and learn more about each other. You'll start to see the things that maybe trigger your spouse or things that are maybe sore spots for them, and you'll learn how to maybe tread lightly or not even say those things or discuss certain topics, because the last thing we want to do is upset our significant other. So instead of looking at minor disagreements and minor bumps in the road as, oh my gosh, this is the end, we're not meant to be together, look at them as opportunities to grow as a couple.
Right. Twins can grow up in the same house, same parents, same mom, same dad, all that together, and still have different worldviews on things. So that's what happens together when you come together. So there's going to be unfortunately, times of strife where you're going to have those disagreements and things like that. You're going to look at paying bills differently. I know some people like waiting till the grace period is almost up to pay a bill. Some people like to pay it, early. So you're going to have those disagreements on how you do stuff, but it's all about the communication part of it and coming together and just having empathy and trying to, an understanding of how we do this, and let's work together, and not, that way your arguments don't last, all night long, that you can just put a time limit on your argument. You can do it, agree to disagree or whatever, and then just move on.
So As we talk about coming from different backgrounds and different ways of doing things, and sometimes even being raised in different parts of the country and just a different family dynamic, another expectation that's not necessarily reality in marriage is that your families are going to come together and just be this one big happy family, and everyone is going to love each other just as much as the two of you love each other.
Right.
Well, that unfortunately is not always the reality. Sometimes our family members don't like the person that we chose to be with, or maybe they don't like other people in their family. And that's okay. In a perfect world, we would all come together, kumbaya, one big happy family, and everyone gets along. But again, we have different personalities. And so don't have the expectation that everyone is going to feel the same about the two of you as you feel. But know that it's okay. You are able to create the boundaries where everyone is comfortable, no one is disrespected, but also no one is forced to be in a relationship with someone that they don't really care to be in a relationship with. But at the same time, you need to give your spouse the opportunity to still have that relationship with their family, but not necessarily force you to be in a space where you feel uncomfortable or unwanted.
Right. I know in times you talk about in-laws versus outlaws when you're talking about when you get into a marriage or relationship or something, but it's a matter of how that goes, you know, and really the Bible says this, is that you join together, you leave your family, and then it's about you and your spouse. And that's what it becomes about. You got to keep those other people out of it. You know, and I know a lot of family like to volunteer information. They like to make those phone calls, or they like to try and guess what's going on in your family. But it's about your relationship with who you're with. And yes, who you got to keep it close with. You can't let those other ones dictate your life. You know, just because you're not the favorite of someone, or someone wants you to be with somebody else, that's your choice. I chose her, she chose me, and then we move on. And that's what we try to teach people. It's all about you. It's not about the ones on the outside. It's about what happens inside your house. And like I said, when I marry people, we do counseling and stuff like that. That's what I focus on. Don't bring other people into your business. You keep it together, because other people will cause you problems, especially when they're dealing with they can't really deal with their own issues. So they come and try to deal with yours.
Right. And what happens with the hallway stays with the hallway.
Yes.
Another big misconception or false expectation as opposed to reality in a marriage is that you're going to have that warm and fuzzy feeling and those butterflies in your stomach every single day. And if you don't, that means something's wrong. Your marriage is dead. Or if you feel that your spouse doesn't have those feelings, then you've hit a slump and there's something wrong. That is a total misconception and not at all reality. As we've said over and over in this video, we are two different people. And even though we are a married couple or an engaged couple in a committed relationship, we still have our own struggles and things that go on in our life. Most of us go out to a job every day or school every day, or maybe we're dealing with children. Whatever it is, it affects us in a certain way. And so maybe we're not feeling all warm and fuzzy and cozy and whatever, but that doesn't mean that feeling's not going to come back. Do not feel like your marriage is over just because you have a couple of bad days.
Right. You got to be careful with those warm and fuzzy feelings. Make sure there's just not indigestion or something. But you're going to have disagreements. That's just part of it. We talked about that before. You're going to have disagreements. There are going to be times where you're just not feeling that person, you know, in a certain way or certain times, because things just happen in life. We're ups and downs. There's different outside influences that kind of reflect on us. One of the things we kind of talked about before, I think in one of our other previous videos, is when you come home, you want to make sure it's your refuge. You don't want to bring that home and have issues inside your house and things like that. So that warm and fuzzy feeling should be, once you walk in the door, this is my safe place. She's my soft landing spot where I can come and vent to her, and she'll help me plan my attack for taking on the world, and I'm here for her too. It shouldn't be that I come home, I've been fighting outside, now I come home and I'm fighting inside also. So that expectation of not having the warm and fuzzies, there's different things that kind of play on that, but you should always stay in love. Don't let those other outside influences affect that, and just have fun with it.
Yeah, and the thing is, oftentimes as the spouse may be on the receiving end, for lack of a better phrase, if you feel that your spouse isn't feeling as warm and fuzzy as they used to, maybe they're not giving you the same attention today as they normally do, we have the tendency to internalize that and think it's about us, and then that makes us reciprocate in the same way and meet them with the same energy. But what we really should do is try to be there for our spouse, and again, be that soft place for them to fall. Ask them what's going on with them. How was their day? Is there anything that we can help them with? Don't immediately get defensive and think, oh, it must be me. He must be upset with me. Oh, he didn't give me a hug when he walked in the door, because most of the time, it doesn't have anything to do with us, and they're not even realizing that they're behaving any differently because their mind is so consumed about whatever it is that does have them feeling that way. So instead of internalizing it and becoming defensive and feeling like it's all about you, why not just create that safe place for your spouse to vent and open up, and then do whatever you can to make them feel better?
Right. Those warm and fuzzy feelings, I always put it like this: you're in charge of creating those warm and fuzzy feelings for yourself, for your spouse, because you're in charge of your emotions. You're in charge of how you respond and react to different stuff. And like I said, I leave that stuff at the door. Problems and things like the outside world, leave those at the door, come in, and now I'm all in love again, because I'm being loved. This is where I can be. This is where I'm loved at. So I want to be home and be with her. And anytime that goes on, we're in love. And like I said, you're in charge of those warm and fuzzy feelings. You're in charge of leaving that other stuff outside the door. And then once you're together, this is our bubble.
So I hope this has been of value to you guys. And these are just some of the things that we've encountered since we've been married, and realized the expectations that we had versus the reality that we live. Mm-hmm. But we're sure that some of you have had different experiences. So I would love for you to drop those in the comments. What are some of the expectations that you had when you first entered into your relationship versus the reality that you find yourself living? We would love to hear about them, because we know we are not the only ones who have realized that. Also, if you haven't already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. We would love to have you as a part of the Hallway tribe. And also, since you don't want to miss an episode, because I know you don't, be sure to hit that notification bell so you will be notified every time we drop new content. And until next time, guys, we love you to bits and pieces, and we're so glad that you join us each and every time. And so, I'm Stay Hall.
And I'm Wallace Hall.
And we'll see you next time in
The Hallway.